Excellent. Excellent, excellent. I have it on my screen. We'll go back to this. What I find, and I think Holly would agree with this, is that caregivers are a forgiving group. Can we put it that way? And they understand that sometimes things happen. But Holly Glover is the family, and give her your direct, well, you can give your exact title, but she is an educator at James L. West. She's a program coordinator. That's James L. West Center for Dementia in Fort Worth, Texas. And in that role, I've sat in on many of her programs. She is a wealth of information. She's a licensed professional counselor, a certified dementia care specialist, and it goes on and on about her qualifications. But you'll find her to be very down to earth, but she also knows what she's talking about. So with no further from me, take it away, Holly.
All right, thank you. Glad to be back with y'all. I think it was last February.
About a year.
I think so. Great. And it is conference season. So I have already started traveling. I was in Midwest City last week for a couple of days and Las Colinas, and we'll be soon getting ready to go out to some other conferences. It is my pleasure to get to travel around and teach professionals and family caregivers about dementia, all things dementia, hospice, caregiver burnout, stress, and all of the things that go along with dementia. Today, we're going to be talking, though, about normal versus not normal aging and brain health. So I'm going to make sure, it looks like I'm going to be able to share my screen. Yes, I believe so. Let me just get myself situated here. All right, does it look good? Can you see everything?
Yes.
Perfect.
Good.
Okay, let's get started. There's some information on here. Those of you that get the slides, there's some information about the West Center. We are in Fort Worth. We do have a day program, and we're a 100-bed long-term care center for those that have dementia. That's all we do is dementia care. And this is our 30th year. So we are having a big anniversary this year. We also launched our bilingual education this year. So we have got all of the programs that we do. We can also do in Spanish. And so we go out and, like I said, we travel, or we can do things online. So let's get started. Some of the statistics that we have on here, I think, are probably low, but one of the first things I want us to mention, and there's a reason that it's in bold print, and I'm just going to say dementia. Dementia itself and memory loss is not a normal part of aging. We need to hear that from the beginning. Memory loss is not a normal part of aging. The number one thing that families will say to me whenever they come in and they're replacing their loved one is, you know, we just thought they were getting older. We're going to talk about what does that look like? What is normal getting older? Slowing down, yes. Every once in a while forgetting names, having to run through everybody in your family before you get the right grandkid. Why did I come in this room? Where are my keys? Where was I going? Those type things are normal. But we're going to talk about when do we need to get concerned, because real memory loss is not a normal part of aging. We're also going to talk about what else can cause memory loss besides dementia, because there are other things that can cause memory loss besides dementia. A lot of people don't realize that, and they just jump automatically to it must be dementia. They're scared to death of it, so they don't go to the doctor. And we've got something that could have been reversed, because there is reversible memory loss. We're not going to reverse something like Alzheimer's disease, vascular dementia, Lewy body dementia, any of those. But there are some memory losses that we can reverse. So we'll talk about that. The goal, though, and I want us to see this in the green box, if we enter old age with a better developed, healthier brain, we're likely to live longer, happier, and more independent lives with a much reduced chance of developing dementia. So we're also going to talk about some things we can do to make sure and take care of our brains. These are some 2020 statistics. We get new statistics out. It's usually about every other year. So we will have some more statistics coming out. But let's just start with, here's a question we get asked a lot. What's the difference in Alzheimer's and dementia? Alzheimer's is the most common type or form of dementia. So when you see that first bullet point that says Alzheimer's disease is the most common cause of dementia, that's what it's saying. Of all the dementias, and there's over 130 different types of dementia, by the way, and even if you work in the field, you're probably going to only see 8 to 10 of them over and over and over again. The others are really, really rare. But I always say 70%. 70% of all dementias is Alzheimer's disease, because you can find 60 and you can find 80. So we usually say 70%. So 70% of all dementias is Alzheimer's disease. It's the 6th leading cause of death in the United States, but it's the only one in the top 10 that cannot be prevented, it cannot be cured, and it cannot be slowed down. All we can do is treat symptoms. There's not a treatment. There are meds that they call memory meds that they likely will put our loved ones on if we go in and they are having memory issues like Aricept, Namenda, Exelon, those type meds. They'll call them memory meds, but what they're doing is they're treating symptoms. They're treating symptoms of dementia. There are some proven ways to reduce our risk of ever developing it, and I'm going to give you those at the end of this. 1 in 3 seniors, and by seniors, they're using 65 and older, 1 in 3 seniors dies with Alzheimer's disease or another related dementia. And if you look at the statistics, the older a person gets, so 80% of people over the age of 70, so let me back up. 1 in 10 people over the age of 65 has a dementia. 80% of those 5 million are age 75 plus, and almost 2/3 of people with dementia are women. And people will say, well, why is that? Well, women live longer. The latest statistics on age, and we took a hit the last 2 years. We were going up, 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 up with life expectancy in the United States, and bam, COVID happened. And wow, have we taken a hit. Average life expectancy in the United States right now for a woman is 81. It was 86. So we've really fell. And average life expectancy for a man right now in the United States is 76. It was 81. So we really have taken a hit the last 2 years. I'm hoping that's going to start to turn around. So causes of memory loss and confusion. These that you see here are progressive dementias. The most common we've talked about is Alzheimer's disease. The next most common is vascular dementia, and it is exactly what it sounds like. People who've had issues with anything cardiovascular have a really high chance of developing vascular dementia. So high blood pressure, diabetes, obesity, cholesterol issues, anything and everything that has to do with the heart. If a person has had any type of vascular issues throughout their life, they're at a higher risk of later developing vascular dementia. Smokers are at a very, very high risk of developing vascular dementia. Anything that can cause an impairment to the function of those blood vessels feeding that oxygenated blood to the brain. Frontotemporal dementia is exactly what it sounds like also. It's more located in the frontotemporal regions of the brain. And this is where, with all dementias, the brain begins to atrophy. It's going from a 3-pound brain down to about a 1-pound brain. In frontotemporal dementia, the frontotemporal parts of the brain pull back first. And so we can see people with frontotemporal dementia many times will have difficulties with reasoning and rational behaviors before they have any memory loss. They can actually get diagnosed with frontotemporal dementia and not have any memory loss yet. It's coming. There's dementia with Lewy bodies. Huntington's disease has dementia that's associated with it. HIV has dementia associated with it. When you see the term mixed dementia, that means a person has more than one type. And the latest statistics show that mixed dementia is now the #2 type of dementia because so many people have vascular dementia. So it will say Alzheimer's with vascular, Lewy body with vascular, just meaning that they have 2 types of dementia. And then a secondary dementia is when somebody has a disease like Parkinson's disease and they develop Parkinson's disease dementia. Or they have something like ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, and then they develop dementia because of the Lou Gehrig's. MS now falls under the dementia umbrella. People with multiple sclerosis many times will then go on to develop dementia, and that's called a secondary dementia. But there's other causes of memory loss. So I want us to make sure and understand that all memory loss doesn't equal dementia. I love this cartoon that's on here. There's the dinosaurs. The ark is floating away and they're saying, oh crap, was that today? Oh, we missed the boat and now there's no dinosaurs. But I want us to think about other things that can cause memory loss. And you may have even had this happen to you before. And this is why whenever we have a loved one who first develops any memory loss, or if we develop any memory loss, we've got to get to the primary care physician first because we've got to rule this stuff out. We can have an infection in our body to the point that we're having memory loss, especially if somebody becomes septic. Other health, somebody may have had a stroke, coronary artery disease, COPD, diabetes, sleep apnea can cause somebody to have some memory loss. I've got sleep apnea. When you're sleep deprived, you can get confused and it can appear that you are really having some memory loss. Anybody who's having metabolic problems, thyroid issues can cause memory loss. Medication interactions, and some medications as a side effect has memory loss. My daughter's 27 years old. They started her on Topamax last month. She couldn't name objects anymore. That was her reaction to that medication. Now, other people can take it and not have that, but she was looking at objects and couldn't say the word pen. She could tell you it was the thing that writes, but she couldn't say the word. She did not have dementia. She was having a side effect from a medication. But if she'd have been 80 and been doing that, we'd have been real close to go, uh-oh, they've developed the dementia. No, they hadn't. They were having medication interaction. Lifestyle choices, abusing medications, and this can be our prescription medications. In the last 3 years during the pandemic, the abuse of prescription medications has gone through the roof. We've been going through something as a nation called collective grief. We've all been grieving everything that's been going on, and we've turned to things that we've already got on hand to help us get through it. Alcohol sales are through the roof. People tell me all the time, I used to have 1 glass of wine, now I'm finishing the bottle every day. Well, that could make you have some memory loss. Or I'm taking more of my prescription medication than I'm supposed to. And then if you combine alcohol and medications, smoking, and then here's depression. And depression's another one right now. We've had a lot more people being diagnosed with depression. There's nothing wrong with that. We've all been through a time. I'm much more worried about people that haven't had some side effects from the last 3 years. But a person who's in a major depressive disorder and isn't treating it in any way can start having memory loss. And then unmanaged stress. And I know we've got plenty of that. So please hear me when I say unmanaged stress can cause you to have memory loss. And we'll talk more about that. For a person to get a diagnosis of a dementia, they have to have an issue with at least 2 functions of the brain that are interfering with day-to-day life. Now, 2 functions, they have to have 2 functions. So it's not just memory loss. We're not just going to go into the doctor and say, mom or dad's having memory loss, but everything else is completely normal. Then that's not dementia. There's something else going on. They've got to have at least 2, and most of the time they have more than this. And there's over 35 common symptoms to dementia. All I've listed here are the most common. Immediate recall usually is the first thing that we see change with memory, where we can't recall something that happened just a few moments ago or a few minutes ago. And then short-term, and then long-term. And some people keep their long-term memory throughout the course of the disease. Being able to be reasonable and rational, where we talk louder and slower, trying to get mom to understand why we need them to take their medicine or get in the shower, and it isn't happening. Being able to focus, losing language skills, their personality may start to change. They may not be able to take care of themselves. And one of the reasons they can't take care of themselves, this is called ADLs, activities of daily living, is because there's so many darn steps in doing it. Think about how many steps there are sequencing to get ready in the morning. Just this morning, brushing your teeth, putting on makeup, brushing your hair, getting dressed. Think about how many steps there were to all of that. Add a shower in there. And part of dementia is sequencing issues. I don't know what order to do this in. So it's easier to just not do it at all. Or you go in and they've got toothpaste all over their face and they're shaving. Because I know I'm supposed to be doing something, but I've got all my stuff out of order. Movement and coordination also, which means their gait may change or their walking may change. Dementia is an umbrella term. That's why I love this graphic. Dementia is an umbrella term, and underneath that umbrella are all these 130 plus different types of dementia. Alzheimer's being the #1 or the most common type of dementia. Now, I do want us to look at this. This is 10 signs that somebody may have dementia. Now, I don't want you to go, oh my gosh, they've got one of them and automatically think it's dementia, because it could be other things. These are from the Alzheimer's Association, and this is actually 2 different graphics on here. So I want us to just notice, I'm going to do the one on the right first. Regularly repeated questions where we've answered and they continue to repeat. A person leaving themselves notes around the house. Now, that doesn't mean if you're like me and you've got notes everywhere, because I've got notes sticking everywhere too, but I do not have dementia. I'm stressed. Difficulty with everyday tasks, trouble following a storyline where they can't keep up with what's going on the story on the TV. And maybe they don't even want it on anymore because it's confusing them. Trouble finding items, getting lost in familiar places, having a hard time communicating. This can be somebody starting to use the words thing and stuff. You know, the stuff and the thing and the stuff, because they can't find the noun. Having a hard time focusing, mood changes, and changes that are worse at night. I hate using the word behaviors. We are really pushing at the West Center to get rid of that word behaviors. We're starting to use the word expressions. Behavior sounds very negative. A person with dementia is doing the very best that they can with what remains. They're not having a behavior, they're having an expression. They're trying to get an unmet need met. It can look like a behavior, but when we say behavior, that sounds so negative. So how do we get a diagnosis? The first time that we see any type of memory loss, we want to first start with the primary care physician. Then, after doing a whole lot of blood work, doing some very basic tests there in the office, we will generally wind up at the geriatrician, the neurologist, a neuropsychologist. most folks end up at the neurologist or the geriatrician, and they're going to do a complete family history. They're going to do some some mental status test. They're going to do a neurological exam, extensive blood work, and very likely they're first going to order an MRI to look at the brain, because so many of the dementias now can be seen. That's fairly new in the big history of things. We weren't able to see it before, but what they have to do is they have to start ruling out, because if we go in there to that primary care physician and our thyroid is completely out of whack and we get our thyroid back where it needs to be, and the memory loss goes away, we're good. But if somebody's having several of those brain function disorders and it's affecting their day-to-day life, we've got to get to the neurologist. So some people will say this: why are we going to take them and get tested if there's not a cure? Why are we even going to go to the doctor? Because there are lots of clinical drug trials going on right now. And if you live in the DFW area or have access to the DFW area, wow, UNT Health Science Center and UT Southwest has some phenomenal drug trials going on right now. And most people feel good about signing up for them because they say, I'd rather take a chance with something than to know that there's nothing. But we also can treat symptoms. You heard me say memory meds. And for some people, they're very successful on those meds. Some people can't take them at all. It makes them sick. Like they have digestive issues with them. Other reasons that we go and we make sure that this is what it is, it gives a person time to plan for the future, and it gives the family time to plan for the future. You can take advantage of education. You can start getting support, because what I tell families is the earlier you get educated, the earlier you get into a support group and you find a group of folks to walk along with you. In fact, some people in my support groups call themselves a tribe. They'll say, I've got my tribe. I call them the experts. I've got a group of experts that meets every Wednesday. I got a group on Fridays, and I got another group that meets the second Saturday of each month. Open groups that anybody can come to. But it's where people get together and realize they're not the only one going through this. It gives us time to focus on what is important. Now, I do want you to understand, before we go into some very specific things about normal aging versus abnormal aging, there are some things that are going to change as we get older. One of the first things that changes in many of us is our vision. Vision changes. Lots of us have the glasses and the contacts. I'm right there with you. Another thing that changes and is normal is for hearing to change. It's very normal for a person to have hearing changes. Another thing that's normal is for our strength to change. We're not as strong as we used to be, physically strong, and we don't have the stamina that we used to have. Wow, those are hard to wrap our minds around, especially when we realize it's happened. I think with each 10 years, it's felt like to me at 40, there was a certain switch that went off. At 50, there was a switch that went off. Wait a minute, what's going on here? Forgetting names and numbers, or where you put something. All of those things are very normal. The name, the number will likely come back to you at 3 a.m. You'll sit right straight up and you'll know what it was. But you're not arguing with somebody that it never existed. That's dementia. So let's look specifically at normal aging. We may have a harder time recalling. Here's a good example. My brother was just in. My daughter had to have a surgery in February. My brother came in from Indiana. He's 2.5 years younger than me. And the way he remembers our childhood and the way I remember our childhood are two completely different childhoods. You'd think we grew up in separate houses. That doesn't mean that either one of us have dementia. Our recall is different. And our recall might even be a little bit slower, where he may remember something. And while I'm sitting there listening to him, I go, I was there. I do remember that. but recall gets a little slower. That's normal. We may even catch ourselves starting to complain about memory slips. And as long as other people aren't coming to us with concern about our memory, we're probably all right. We should not be getting lost in familiar places. However, we might walk outside and forget where we parked the car. That's normal. Now, what? So you have to start doing tricks. I always park by the cart return where you put the carts, because then I know if I forget which one I'm by, if I go to each of the cart returns, I'm bound to find my car. Or if I make it start beeping, that kind of stuff is normal. How to operate common devices. I hate these darn things. I don't know if you can see, I'm holding up my cell phone. When there is an update on it, it takes me forever to figure out the update, but I can do it. That's normal. Getting frustrated easily at new technology, normal. A person with dementia can't learn new information. Can't. Or you might think you just got them. Okay, I've taught them this new whatever, and they go to lunch and come back, and it's gone. We can learn it. Yes, you can. I can hear people going, no, I can't. Yes, you can. We just don't want to. We should also always be able to maintain our level of interpersonal social skills. We can still be social and we can still be pleasant without being rude. We do still know how. We may choose not to, but we know how. A person with dementia is going to lose their filter. They're going to start saying and doing things that they never would have said or done before. As we get older, our social skills remain. Anything that changes about our social skills, we choose, unless you have dementia. And then recent memory for important events, affairs, conversations should not be impaired. You might be writing them down like I do. You might carry an agenda like I do, but that's not dementia. We're just having to write them down. Here's a little bit more on normal aging, then we're going to look at abnormal aging. Again, you may be concerned about your alleged forgetfulness, but nobody else is mentioning anything to you about it. So you're probably all right. It's probably just you're slowing down a little bit. You might notice yourself doing more. Okay, hold on just a minute. I got to think of the word. That's normal. I do it all the time. It's on the tip of my tongue. And I may even start talking about something else and then boom, it comes back. That's normal. Forgetting where you place something, walking into the room and saying, why did I come in here? You can back yourself out of the room, and you can figure out why you came in there. And if you don't right now, you'll figure it out in a little bit. A person with dementia is going to walk in the room, get distracted by something else, and never remember that they were supposed to be going in there to get their blue jacket because they saw cookies on the counter. Blue jacket's gone. And it doesn't matter how many times you tell them, I sent you in there to get your blue jacket. No, you didn't, because I found the cookies. Somebody that's having normal aging is always going to be able to learn new information, which means that we can learn the new remote. We can learn the new phone. We can learn, it's just harder for us, or we might have to write it down. Also, as we get older, it is normal for us to have a harder time multitasking. Where when we were younger, we may have been on the phone, watching TV, cooking dinner, and holding a baby on our hip all at the same time. And we were doing all of them just pretty darn good. And now we can't do that anymore. Maybe we can do 2 things at the same time, but we can't do 4. Remembering details declines. This is part of normal aging, where maybe we don't remember all the details. We should always be able to reason and be rational. That is normal aging. Now, I've had people say, but my dad or my grandpa or my mother just got so cantankerous, they just were getting old and ornery. I said, but Could they still be reasonable? That's the difference. A person with dementia, with all types of dementia, they are going to lose the ability to be reasonable and rational. So let's talk about abnormal aging. We already have a little bit. This is why there's a reason this is the first bullet point. Forgetfulness that disrupts daily life. If the forgetfulness, if the memory loss is disrupting daily life, we've got a problem. There's an issue. Not being able to keep track of the day. Time with most people that have real dementia is one of the first things that goes. Mom, I just talked to you this morning. You most certainly did not. I can show you on the phone. Doesn't matter if you show them on the phone. You didn't talk to her this morning because she said you didn't. Now, a person who has dementia may complain of forgetfulness, but unable to recall instances where memory loss was noticed. Meaning, especially early in the disease, they may realize they forgot it, but they can't necessarily give you the details of it. A person with dementia will get lost in familiar territory and sometimes can't find their way back, or it takes them a very, very, very long time. And eventually they might even get lost in their own home. And they're going to become less and less able to operate new devices. And in the big scheme of history, these cell phones are new learning, because probably all of us on this call remembers a time that these things did not exist. This is considered new learning. So you'll find somebody with dementia, even though they've had one of these for 10 or 20 years, eventually you may find them pointing it at the TV, trying to use it as a remote control, or it just disappears because this is not a phone. It doesn't look like a phone. A phone sits on a desk and it's a rotary, or it's a push button. And they're going to get to where they cannot learn anything new. Also, a person that has real memory loss is going to lose their social skills, and they may behave socially inappropriate. Again, what that means is their filter goes away. The part of the brain that controls, don't say that, don't do that, yes, say that, yes, do that, goes away. They will say and do things they never, ever would have said or done before. Part of it's because dementia, the brain is dying, the brain is failing, and we have two language centers. We've got a left side language and a right side language. The left language leaves. That's an easy way to remember it. It's a Teepa Snow trick. Those of you who've heard of Teepa Snow. Left language leaves. That's our day-to-day language. That's our nouns. That's names. And those things go away with dementia. But right rhythmic remains. We have a rhythmic language center on the right, which is music. Music stays. Poetry stays. Prayer stays. Anything that's rhythmic, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But there are words that store on the right that remain that are really difficult for us as caregivers, because curse words, sex talk, and racial slurs are stored on the right. And the reason they're stored on the right is because they are words that we did not commonly use as a child. When we were first learning to talk and we were learning all these new nouns and verbs and adjectives and adverbs, we stored them all over here on the left. Left language is our day-to-day language. But once upon a time, we said or heard curse words, racial slurs, and sex talk, and somebody said to us, "Oh, I better never hear you say that again. You're going to be in big trouble." And so we stored it over here in a special place on the right, and it stays. And people that have never said those words will say them because it's what they have left. Some more information about abnormal aging. Family members or friends are much more concerned about instances of memory loss than the person themselves. The person who actually has the memory loss is not near as concerned as everybody else is. hard time finding words, or they start to substitute words like I told you earlier, thing and stuff. You know, the thing and the thing. Now, if you've got somebody who's doing that, one thing you can say to them is, what does the thing do? Well, that thing that writes, because lots of times they can tell you what the thing or the stuff does. And then our next trick is to say, show me the thing. Show me the thing. Because many times they can still point at it. They'll misplace things, but they won't be able to retrace their steps. They can't learn new things. They forget how to do familiar things like bathing, shaving, brushing their teeth, but those are all part of muscle memory. And with occupational therapy and speech therapy, lots of times we can tap back into muscle memory and get them to doing those things again. Their personality is very likely going to change, and they're probably going to make some poor decisions and have decreased judgment. So we're going to talk a little bit about optimal brain aging. A regular brain, our brains without dementia, weighs about 3 pounds. If a person lives to the end stage of the disease, that brain is going to be about 1 pound. Now, lots of times you'll see things that say we only use about 10% of our brain, and that's not true. We use 100% of our brain. We use each area of the brain. And there's things that we can do to strengthen our brain. And again, we will start talking about some of those. And I do want to leave time. I see there's some stuff in the chat. I'm going to leave some time at the end. So the older healthy brain, again, the reason that we slow down, because you heard me say we shouldn't be having real permanent memory loss, but we do slow down, is because the communication between the neurons slows down. Our blood flow might be reduced because maybe we hadn't had the best diet our whole life, or maybe we smoked at one time, or maybe we worked in a chemical plant, or maybe we lived in a house with asbestos. There's all kinds of reasons where the blood flow to our brain may be reduced and we slow down. You may have heard a lot about inflammation lately. There's all kinds of anti-inflammatory diets that are out there. Inflammation can increase in our body, and that makes us slow down. We also have a slower sensory stimulation, meaning that like our feeling in our fingertips may change. You may develop neuropathy. That type of stuff is fairly normal. My daughter actually went in and had her fingerprints done. She's an LMSW, and they told her that one of her fingerprints has worn off from typing. She's 27, but she's been raised typing her whole life. She had keyboarding in preschool, and she's got a place where she doesn't have a fingerprint anymore. So at some point, she's not going to have the feeling as much right there. And we got a whole generation of people coming up that's been typing since they were born. They've been on the phones. So sensory is going to change. Our tastes change as well. We still, the older we get, we actually become more resourceful, extremely resourceful. That's part of the wisdom that comes with being older. Our knowledge actually improves because we've got this huge database up here of everything that we have experienced. We can look at another person and tell their emotions because we know how to read a person's face. We know how to read another person's words and tone. And a healthy brain stays plastic brain. You see that's in quotes. We can adapt to new challenges and tasks. We might not want to, but we can. So there's some risk factors to developing dementia, and the number one risk factor is age. 1 in 8 people over the age of 65 has dementia, some type of dementia. Now, I want you to notice genetically, most dementias are only about 30% genetic. 30%. 70% are all these other risk factors. If a person gets diagnosed with MCI, that's mild cognitive impairment, about 40% of the time they will go on to develop a dementia. anyone who's had trauma to the brain, concussions, traumatic brain injuries. This is why we see this in people who played sports all their lives, especially professional athletes. And then there are some studies that also show us that a person who has Down syndrome, usually in about their mid-40s, will start to develop dementia. So those are some of the risk factors. Some other risk factors is gender, which we talked about earlier. We have more women than men who have dementia because women do tend to live longer. There are some studies out there about hormone replacement therapy. What's interesting though with that study is the studies that I have read that have gone on actually show women who use hormone replacement therapy, their chances of getting dementia are fewer. They come down, but it's good to have the hormone replacement therapy. Now, I know years ago on Oprah, somebody came on and said, don't use any hormone replacement therapy. It causes breast cancer. And bam, everybody started to come off of their hormones. There's actually some research out there that shows that women who use hormone replacement therapy have it brings down their risk of dementia. Now, again, that's just in studies. We've talked about head trauma. Smoking and drinking are also risk factors. Having any type of cardiovascular disease, being overweight, sleep apnea, a person who has a history of, hear this, untreated depression, untreated depression. There is now a link between years of untreated depression and dementia because it changes the brain. Now, if you're treating it, that's different. This is untreated, just like with high blood pressure. If you're treating your high blood pressure and you're keeping your blood pressure in a normal range, okay. It's those that don't treat it that we end up with a vascular dementia. And then environmental toxins. I mentioned these earlier, pollutions, chemicals, poor nutrition. And this last one, lots and lots of research on limited physical, mental, and social activity. Boy, some of us found that out during the pandemic when all of a sudden we were in house by ourselves. I had people coming on my support group every week who said that I was the only person they talked to in a whole week. They didn't talk to anybody else. They felt like they were getting confused. They were alone with their own thoughts too much. Some other things that we can do to make sure that we have good brain health. And when you study brain health, you will see these pillars, a plant-based diet. There are several out there. There's the Mediterranean diet. Some people are given the DASH, D-A-S-H diet. That is a diet that has to do more with hypertension or high blood pressure. But there is a fairly new diet out there right now called the MIND, M-I-N-D, the MIND diet. And what it is some doctors have taken the Mediterranean and the DASH diet and put them together and created the MIND diet. And it is supposed to be a diet that is specifically for healthy brain aging. So you might look that up, the MIND diet. Exercise, and this does not have to be strenuous exercise. I used to do the REACH program with the Alzheimer's Association, and I would bring up exercise, and sometimes my clients, I had rural clients in Johnson and Parker counties would say, I'm taking care of somebody all day. I don't have time to exercise. And I'd ask them, where's your mailbox? Well, it's out at the road. I said, can you walk out there twice today instead of once? Well, yeah, I guess I could. And then could you go out there 4 times? Could you just walk to the road and back? Something. Could you get the little pedal thing that you sit on the table and you sit here and pedal, and your loved one might want one and want to do it with you, pushing that oxygenated blood up to the brain. Sleep. And the point with sleep is that it is good quality sleep. It's one thing to be sleeping, but it's another to get some rest. Managing our stress, we all know that that is easier said than done, but there are so many different ways that we can manage stress. That's a whole nother program. I've got lots of programs on managing stress, but doing what we can to manage our stress. staying socially connected. That was one of the things that during the pandemic, we started doing all of our programs online. We started recording them. We were getting with people and having them call and check in with each other so that they were talking to another person at least once a day. This is why we encourage people to use day programs for their loved ones that have dementia. It is amazing what families will tell me. Sometimes they're very hesitant about coming to the day program. Notice I'm saying day program and not daycare. Adults don't go to daycare. That's for children. Adults go to a day program. We've got lots of language things that we need to be careful about. Just like adults don't wear diapers, babies wear diapers. Adults wear briefs. And adults don't wear bibs either. Adults wear clothing protectors, dignity, and independence. But when they bring their loved one who has dementia to the day program and they get to be around other people in a safe place where they feel like they have a reason and a purpose and they're not just sitting in front of the TV all day. And we get their circadian rhythm back in order. So they're up during the day and they're sleeping at night. It's amazing the things that happen. And then brain fitness. Brain fitness is just what it sounds like. So yes, doing brain games is good for our brain. Now, here's the kick. You do not want to always get the book that says easy crossword puzzles because you can work all the easy ones. That's wonderful. But when you do that, you're using the same area of the brain over and over and over and over again. And the rest of the brain's just sitting there. It's not lighting up. So I'll tell people, go get the variety puzzle book and try to work all of them. Don't just skip over to the easy parts. Because when we do something that challenges our brain, if we were looking at you under a scan, it would be lighting up areas of your brain because you're trying to figure out how to do that medium crossword puzzle. Doing puzzles on your phone, because a lot of folks do things on the phone now. Those are good, especially the ones that get harder and harder and harder. Those are good ones. Because again, you don't want to work the same ones that do the same thing over and over and over and over. If you're doing that for fun, that's one thing. But if you're really doing it for brain fitness, you want something that's going to push you to the next level. So it gets a little bit harder, There's all kinds of brain fitness apps on the phone, and a lot of them are free. So be careful about getting into something that's wanting you to pay every time you go up a level or something. That's cognitive health. Here's my information. I did want to make sure and leave some time at the end to answer any questions anybody might have. I saw their stuff in the chat, so let me see. If anybody, you can put stuff in the chat if you had any questions. Okay, okay. That was the technical issues that was going on. Anybody have any questions, comments, concerns?
I was wondering if we could hear from some people who perhaps are caregivers now and what some of their challenges have been and how they've resolved those. What either they learned at trial and error, or they're in a support group, or how they cope with that. And then a kind of a follow-up with that, I'm real curious about what people are doing for self-care. Because we hear it, we talk about it, you get emails from all of us, but what are you actually doing? It's easy. Sometimes we're not walking our talk, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Hello, this is Myra. So you want to know what we do for support for ourselves as we take
Yes.
care of our loved ones?
Yes.
So I do belong to support groups, and more than one. I find that support groups, it's kind of like dating. And if there's anyone on the call and you've never been to one, as you join one, give it like at least 3 times before you make your decision, because caregivers, as you know, get really busy and sometimes we're not able to join all the calls. And I find that there's always helpful information there. I know some people think it's just emotional support, which that is true. But however, there's so much that you can learn if you're having a challenge with something, with bathing or feeding or medication. So it's a wealth of knowledge, and especially these type of calls, which I appreciate so much. For myself, that's why I'm here on the call, and I'm getting a lot of good information. It's really hard to take care of yourself, to exercise, and to eat properly, etc. But that's something that I am working on. And one thing that I did discover recently was Epsom salt. So as we become so exhausted by trying to juggle so many things, which you're right, we begin to think at one point when you have to remember so many things, when you have this person whose life depends on you, because with Alzheimer's, they kind of basically, we become the remote control, the puppeteer of their lives. We orchestrate their every movement. So there's a lot of things to remember. Is the Epsom salt. If you have a moment when they're still sleeping, and I even have a camera where mom sleeps once a month, or whatever you can do to really, if you have a tub, fill it up. And I just have an old-fashioned tub, fill it up and put a half a cup of Epsom salt. It's unbelievable what it does for me physically. Like, it really takes that exhaustion away. And I even will put my laptop with Netflix for that little while. And I even got myself a little bath pillow. So I hope that Epsom salt little tip helps anyone on this call.
Yep, thank you.
Good idea.
Hi, Holly. Can you please repost your information? I'm not seeing it on the screen.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I can
It
put it
just
back up.
went on for a second.
Sure. And
Thank
our,
you.
I'll put it back up. Our support groups, like I said, are open. And so that means that anybody can come. I've got 3, and you can email me, or you can go to our website. Hold on just a minute. Let me get this back up here. I've got one on Wednesdays that meets online. And the other thing about our groups is that I've got people whose loved ones are still at home, people whose loved ones are placed with us, people whose loved ones are placed other places, and people whose loved ones have already passed away. So we've got folks everywhere on this journey, and it is amazing the how people come together, look to people who are ahead of them on the journey, and then to be able to help those that are behind them on the journey. And then we've got a group that meets in person on Fridays at the West Center in Fort Worth. And the group that I do on the second Saturday of each month, I'm a grief therapist as well. And that one focuses more on grief. But when you hear that word grief, please don't get hung up on death. Grief just means loss. And if you're taking care of somebody who has dementia, we are going through grief throughout the course of that disease, because I want us to think about something. Grief is about loss. We start grieving the way our relationship used to be from before the time we get a diagnosis, from the time we even think the D word, dementia. We can go into that denial. We can get mad, we can get angry, we can get depressed. And we will just get at a place where we're starting to accept it, and darned if the disease doesn't turn the corner, and now they're in the second stage of it or the middle stage of it. And now I've got to, and there's more on me, because now maybe they can't dress themselves, or they can't take care of their own medicines, or I'm having to assist them at mealtime. So if you're interested in the links, you can go to our website at jameslwest.org, or you can email me and I can send them to you.
And also, we have people listening from all across the United States today. And I want to just remind people that if they don't have access to an Alzheimer's or dementia center, such as where Hollie is, the Alzheimer's Association, I want to offer their phone number, and this is their 800 number. You could call and get information from across the country, 1-800-272-3900, 800-272-3900. Also, they have the easiest URL or website address, alz.org. And you can go into their website and you can find both online as well as live. There are many more live presentations going on than was even 6 months ago. And so you can go online and find out what's going on in your area for live presentations or for Zoom or even telephone presentations. Holly stays very busy. She is frequently doing these. Holly, I don't know if you're doing any live presentations yet, but I know you stay busy with
We are.
with these kind of events. And that's the beauty of Zoom and electronics, is that people can listen from across the country.
It is.
Also, one other thing, if you're looking for things like respite or relief or some help, or you're looking for any other ideas about resources, you can, regardless of what community you're in the United States, you can call 211, and that is a Health and Human Services line that's provided, or contact your local area agency on aging. And again, call 211 or plug Alzheimer's Association into a browser, or your area agency on aging. The area agency on aging is the local, they're across the United States because they're federally funded, and they're the agencies through which the federal dollars for services for people 60 and older and their caregivers. And I'd like to just, one thing I'd like to say, I don't know about all of you, but if you've tried to find any of these Health and Human Services or the Alzheimer's Association or the Veterans Association, remember this: the needs are growing and they're exploding, just as Holly was talking about the increasing number of people that have depression or are reporting any of these other issues. But that doesn't necessarily mean the resources are growing. The needs are growing, but the resources aren't. So you may find you're going to have to leave a number, but it's my experience that the people working those phones and working these organizations, the heart's in the right place. It's just they don't always have enough of them.
And somebody had asked about Spanish support groups, and I put in the chat, we don't have Spanish support group yet, but we have many programs. And then we do have our bilingual educator who is there, who can do one-on-one type things too, if you're interested in that.
Good. And also, I manage through the Area Agency on Aging of Dallas and of North Central Texas, I manage a website, Family Caregivers Online. There are, we link directly to James L. West. We link to Alzheimer's Association. We also have some online education and a lot of blogs about grief and loss, a lot of blogs about, the beauty of blogs is they're short. You can go in, get the information, and even though you may have you read something last week, the nature of grief, the nature of stress, I'm so glad you brought that up, that the memory, we just forget when we're a caregiver. We forget some of the things that we may have heard about yesterday, and we have to be reminded. I've often said there's people that are getting physical fitness, they have a trainer, right? Because it's the repetition and the support. It's the same thing for support groups or for going to education programs. It's a way for us to keep being reminded of things that maybe we learned before, but we need to be reminded again. Does anybody else have a situation they're dealing with that Holly could offer some assistance with problem solving?
This is Myra. I just wanted to know, I know UTIs is something that we have to be very concerned with, but any tips on how to tell a difference if it's a UTI versus a yeast infection?
Normally what I have seen with UTIs, and when I was at the Alzheimer's Association, this came up an awful lot also. A person who has a UTI many times will have I'm going to use that word behavior, but they'll have a challenging behavior that they haven't had before. When people would call in on that hotline, and by the way, if you call the hotline to the Alzheimer's Association, You get a real person. I used to be one of those people that you'd get on the phone. If you call between 9 and 5, you get one of your local people. And if you call after hours, you get someone here in the United States. It just routes it somewhere else. So, but you get a real person. But when people would call and say, oh my gosh, my mom just hit for the first time, or she just spit for the first time, or she just pushed for the first time. So many times it was a UTI. And because UTIs, if you've had them before, you know, it's hard to describe the pain of a UTI, but it's constant. And so lots of times you'll have a behavior more so with a UTI than you would with a yeast infection. With yeast, any type of yeast, lots of times there's itching, and you'll find a person itching or really holding an area wherever that might be. So UTIs many times will bring out a challenging expression.
Thank you.
And I'm posting in some of the phone numbers and websites that we just talked about. So that will be a help too, including Hollie, the Alzheimer's Association, their phone number and their website. Again, such an easy website.
And somebody was asking for the slides. Is there a place where they can get the slides?
They're going to be provided. If you don't have them already, you will be emailed them from the Caregiver Teleconnection WellMed Foundation. And if anyone is joining this session by phone, or that you called in to register, just email them or call them and they will provide those to you. And even if that means few people, they don't have access, they're in rural areas and they have very slow speeds on their internet, so they will mail them to you.
Perfect.
Good question.
And if anybody has anything they want to talk about offline, again, you can, I am, like Xanda said earlier, I'm currently actually out on FMLA. I'm not here. In reality, I'm not here, but I am checking my email. You can email me. I will get back with you. We can do a phone call. We'll set up a time that we can talk one-on-one if you need to.
And I want to acknowledge that Hollie, we scheduled this a couple of months ago, and I wasn't aware of her daughter's situation. And when I found out and that she was on FMLA, I offered her the option, let's reschedule. You don't have to do that. And she just wanted to do it. And I think for several reasons, she's a pro, she's a professional, but also perhaps this was a little bit of normalcy for her. Absolutely. Which in some ways is something she has some control over. So that may be part of her self-care. And think about that too. Some of the things, it always amazes me how many caregivers end up doing volunteer work. Even though they're caregivers, it's a little bit of normalcy and something that they can do that's that they can do instead of being back there just in their role as a caregiver.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So we wish you well. Again, Hollie, thank you so much. And hopefully your daughter continues to get better. And I know you're on your way, you and she are on your way to kind of start preparing for her to come home. So our best wishes on that.
Thank you so much.
Everybody take care. And we hope that we'll see you again next month. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.